which is desire. Third one is man, which is ego. And maya is the illusion. These are the four enemies which just makes us confused and go in the wrong direction. That is called Mullah Nasruddin effect that we just created. So let's take growth. Someone says something to you and you become angry. Seems logical that someone said something and you got angry. What's wrong with that? If he or she said something and I got angry, if he had not said that, I would not have gotten angry. Sounds very logical because you live in the world, you think like a world, you think like matter. Material life, that happens. But think again, where is the seat of anger? It's almost like you walking around with a can of gasoline and you're going through where the festivities of Deepavali is going on. Kids are having fireworks and all of a sudden you catch a fire. Now, there are a lot of sparks being thrown all over, but the fire happened only to you because you are the one walking around with that can of gasoline. What is the can of gasoline that you are walking around with? When somebody says something and you get angry, where is the problem? The problem is your ego. Your ego says, I should not have been said to by such and such person. He should not have said that. All of a sudden the reaction starts. Your feeling that my ego wants to expand. I want to look big. I want to look smart. I want to look more richer. All these things, all of a sudden an obstruction comes in the way. The expansion of ego all of a sudden is put on a halt. And that's where the fire starts. Now sparks can happen. Fire does not have to happen every time the spark comes. But the spark and the can of gasoline combined together is expected. And the spark happened only for a few seconds. How long have you been holding that can of gasoline? For generations, for several lives, you've been fostering this ego that you've been walking around with. So where is the solution? The solution is within, not from outside. Mahavir had been subjected to a lot of torture. He said, my reaction is gone. Somebody spat at Buddha. Buddha said, if you had done the same thing 10 years ago, I would have taught you a very good lesson, but I have lost the capacity to react. I don't have any ego left because I have found out that ego is an illusion. I was fighting for wrong king. Now I'm fighting for myself. I want my peace. And for me, ego comes in the way. So I have realized that what I am, I have received that knowledge, dhyan, and now I have dissolved my ego. So the guy feels so bad. The next day he comes and says, sorry. He says, you are saying to a wrong guy. The Buddha who was yesterday, who listened to that, is not the same Buddha today. I don't have any ego to hold on to the memories of someone said something 10 years ago. You know how our women are especially efficient in that.
30 years.
30 years, right. Sorry, 15 is wrong. And it's individual. It's individual. It's very individual. But that's how things happen. We never bury our past because ego does not let it happen. So, krodh, the seat of anger, is within us. We have to realize. So, our efforts should be directed within us. The same thing, greed. You want money. The dollar bills never says, come and grab me. You are the one going after the money because your desires are within you. You have X amount of thing and you want X plus Y. So again, the ego wants to expand. When the ego wants to expand, whatever you get, you feel good. Whatever you cannot, you feel unhappy. And the process keeps on going. The dollar bill is just sitting there. Somebody who does not have any ego will just look at it. We don't have to run after money either. And there are some people who run away from money. And there are people who do that. But they also have the reason because their ego gets the boost. When they give up everything, they feel so good. And they tell everybody that I gave up this, I gave up this. Even donation becomes a source of ego. I donated that much. And all the religions, all the temples, everywhere, it's all filled.
But it's okay.
It's fine.
Even with
I
that,
don't care.
they donate.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But their spiritual progress is not going anywhere. It might do something good for the society. That's not the point of discussion here. The point of discussion is they have not achieved anything. At the end of their life, they have not moved even an inch towards spirituality. So when you run towards money or you run away from the money, money is important for you, one way or the other, to maintain your ego, right? So when money sits there and it doesn't even bother you one way or the other, that's when you have achieved something. So that again goes for a lot of other things, not just the money. So the greed. So next one is the ego. Ego is very difficult to understand. And scientifically even we can prove that ego is false. When a baby is born, the first figure he or she sees is the mother figure. And in fact, the baby does not even know, psychologically has been proven, that he exists. All he realizes that someone else exists around me. For him, the first realization is you or someone else. And when everything that someone else is negated, and then this feeling of I starts. That my body seems to be different, because when my mom's body moves, I don't move. When I call something, she keeps running and my needs are fulfilled. So there has to be some logical conclusion ultimately comes up and the ego starts building. It's your attachment to the mother figure and then a father figure, then the siblings figures and all that ultimately makes him realize, oh, I am this. And the first thing he sees within his hemisphere is his body. So he thinks that he is the body. That is the seat of creation of ego. Now, these things have been proven scientifically also, and it's really abused also. If you do there was a scientist named Lorenzo. It was a Russian scientist, I think. He did an experiment in 70s on the chickens, and the baby chickens were when they're born. Instead of, as soon as the baby chick was born, and scientifically it has been found that there is a very narrow window where anything, forget about a human character or another chicken, mother, whatever, any character that is introduced, it could be inanimate character. The chicks will think that that is his mother. He did an experiment first with himself. And instead of, as soon as the chick was born, the mother was removed, and he became the first one to take a glimpse of. And they have measured this. And this is the phenomenon called imprinting. The imprinting is being used in poultry industry extensively. Now, so he did himself, and all throughout the life of those chicks, they kept on following him as if they are following their mother. Then he replaced with a balloon, and the chicks thought balloon was their mother. Now, out of all the relations that we have created in our whole life, the most bonding relation you would imagine with a mother, even that is based on just the existence of that particular figure when the imprinting was possible on your mind. Look how fragile that relation can be. But God has put that in our instincts, because when the baby is born, he has no help. So he has to be able to rely on something that is around. If mother, for example, dies during the pregnancy, then literally the baby will be motherless. So these are natural instincts given. So the phenomenon of imprinting can happen on the baby's mind. So this imprinting is so fragile, so false. And that falsehood we carry throughout the life. We fight for our ego. We sacrifice, we get angry if something comes in the way. We have growth is created, desires, we have desires to collect things for the fostering of the ego, the body that we have. All those are wrong identifications. And yet, the whole sansar is based on that. So how fragile the ego is. But that you will never realize until you meditate. Meditation will take you to the step where you realize that you are not the body. The body dissolves, the thoughts dissolve, yet you don't dissolve. You are that infinite consciousness. But that capacity is possible in the human life. Animals cannot do that. So we have that capacity. So again, if we don't take journey within, we'll be totally oblivious of this fact that all this relationship that we really fight for, or love and hug and cry and all these things, were illusion, is total illusion. Ego is, Osho describes as space flower. It's like a flower made out of space. We become happy, we like the colors of this, and it's nothing made out of space. Space is nothing. There is no solidity to the ego. That ego is the identification with our body, identification with our mind, our ideas, and look what is happening. ISIS, all those things are fighting all over. They're all based on egos. If the ego is dissolved, what is left to fight for, right? But again, such an important step we could have taken, we don't take. That's why we're on a wrong train. Now, the thing is, the same imprinting phenomenon was discovered in a long time back, even by Chinese farmers. They had discovered a special stick that as soon as the chicks are born, they use that stick as mother. And they will, wherever the stick goes, the chicks go, and they will put them in their farms where the mushrooms were growing, and on that special fungus or something, some organisms were growing, the chicks would come and eat them up. So the chicks think that mother is taking us to the food source, and they will end up doing, and meanwhile, the Chinese are just watching and enjoying, and all their farms are taken care of. Chinese were very smart people. They also have, in the northern China, it's very interesting, they have, there is a black bird called cormorants. It's a water bird. Cormorants have a very long neck, and they are water birds, so they are very expert in catching the fish. So what the Chinese farmers will do, they will raise the cormorant right from the chick level. So they become literally their pets. And the mother is never observed, so imprinted that this farmer is my mother. So what they will do is they will tie a grass thread around its neck and send the cormorant, once it becomes adult, down into the river to catch the fish. Once the fish comes, because the neck is tied up, the cormorant cannot swallow the fish. So as soon as it comes, it gives the fish to the farmer. The guy is sitting there enjoying his whatever, and then he's collecting the fish. They're so smart. But that's exploitation. That's the exploitation of natural instincts that they could have. Because they actually studied those chicks. When they become bigger and they become adults, they have no interest in the female partners to procreate. And that's how every single egg that is generated are generated because of this imprinting. So they think that it's time to lay the egg. And they lay the eggs, all sterile eggs which will never be fertilized. Every single egg that you eat is a non-fertilized egg created by this imprinting technique. And that is the worst crime to the psyche of a baby chick. But that's how the world operates. So imprinting is a phenomenon. So even during the daytime, during the lifetime, we live for others. We look at the others, and because we are the body, they are the body, we never see them as Atma, because we never know our Atma. We never know our own soul. So we look at that the soul doesn't exist. We look at somebody as whatever we see, how he's dressed, how he's clean or not, what kind of money he's making. All those external characteristics become so important. Again, the ego loves all these things. So that's how the ego perpetuates. That's why telling your children, do this, do those, Mahavir says, has no value unless it is coming from within. So until you do the dhyan, you don't get the jnana. Without jnana, everything else is meaningless, because it's just repetition behavior that anyone can do. People who have not reached to the soul level can act as if they have reached to the soul level very easily. But inside, they may be empty. They may not have had the experience. So people who reach to that level, those we will call arihant. They had reached to the level that they knew who they were, and they merged with total existence, and at that time they had dissolved themselves. They had no ego left. At that level, they just merely existed. And the Jainism, they reached Keval Gnan. Keval Gnan, if you again ask somebody the interpretation of Keval Gnan to a Jain, he will say, somebody who knows everything. What a stupid explanation. If you tell, they say, Osho says that if you put Mahavir and Einstein together, Mahavir probably cannot even give the dimensions of a table, how much it should be tall or wide or deep or anything like that. He cannot match, Einstein in that field, because it was not his expertise. But ask anything about the soul, Einstein cannot say anything. Maybe he could, we don't know, I'm just saying. But Mahavir was the master of the soul. So that's where, again, the wrong rumors spread, and then falsifying the ego, the people who are worshipping the Tirthankars, by saying these things, they're basically satisfying their ego that we are worshipping an entity who knew everything. Because in their mind, the knowledge is only of the objects. So if Keval Gnan means Keval means nothing but, only. Keval, Gnan. At that time, not Gnan of what? Because then there are two entities. Then knowledge of something is a traditional knowledge. No. Arihant reached to the state of Keval Gnan, means only the Gnan, awareness existed. Nothing but awareness. At that time, they were gone. Only the existence was speaking for itself. And that's the state we want to reach. So those people we bow down to. That's just the Namo Arihantanam. They became Shunya. They did not exist. We gave them names, but for them, names didn't matter. For them, materialism didn't matter. They walked away from all these things and dissolved into nothingness. But it is a tough concept to understand, because we deal only with matter. We are used to dealing with dimensions. How tall, how short, how this, how much that, and this and that, how much time. We measure everything by time and all that. But we never get a concept of infiniteness. Infinity is totally beyond our concept, because a concept, again, at the mind and the bhav level. At that time, only the perception, we are perceiving the world. So even at the Atma level, we say, my Atma and your Atma. Now think, if Atma is an infinite consciousness, how can it have boundaries? At the infinite level, any entity which is infinite, how could it have compartments? Then all of a sudden, then it becomes finite. So the really thing is to reach to that soul level, you become Shunya. There is nothing to claim, my Atma, your Atma, nothing like that. And for the first time, you develop the Gnan, that infiniteness is what I am. And then comes the Darshan. Darshan is when I see infinite consciousness within me, I am seeing the same infinite consciousness within you. Because how could it be finite? My consciousness, which is infinite, how could it be any different than infinite consciousness of you or him or her? So at that time, the darshan happens. Darshan is where we see only oneness. And then comes the charitra. Charitra is what you do in the world, including whatever good things have been taught to us, that do this, do that. But that's just a flower. Look how much efforts a tree goes through. from a seedling, it goes, suffers so much, all the vagaries of the nature and all the suffering it goes through to hold on to the maturity level to be able to produce a flower. And the flower produces the fragrance, and that fragrance is your charitra. So charitra is not easy, according to Mahavir. It needs a lot of efforts to clean up your inside. And for that, we have to switch the train. So in the ego makes us run around like crazy. Even when the spouses interact with each other, there are interactions of ego. One ego is trying to expand, another ego is not letting that ego expand. Now, we are civilized, but it's not much different than murders happening in Middle East. Murders happen at physical level, so that again, extension of your ego, that I want to expand myself, you are coming in the way, so I'm going to kill you. But at a very subtle level, we're doing the same thing. So all these things are happening at the mind level. Murders are happening every single day. Mahavir calls that violence. Violence is there because of the ego. So if you understand the nature of your ego and realize that ego is futile, what is there to fight? There is no interactions left anymore. Then there is only expression of what you are. Mullah Nasruddin's son went to school, and in the school, the teacher asked him, which was the biggest war ever fought on the face of the earth? So Mullah Nasruddin's son raises his arm. He says, I know, but I'm not allowed to say it. He says, why? Because he says, my dad said, whatever happens in the house stays in the house. So that is the biggest war.
I didn't get it. Can you say that again?
Between Mullah Nasruddin's husband and wife, the war that was happening, according to him, that was the biggest war. Because that's all he knew. Everything was all else in CNN, not in his life. So, so the distances between the spouses is the distances of ego. Again, ego is yours. It's no one else's. And only you can remove, and no one else can do it for you. People can point, Shastras can point the directions. Even Mahavir jumps from 10-story building and he says, please, ultimately you are the one who have to dissolve your ego. No one else can do it for you. Meanwhile, who is the sufferer? You. You are the sufferer. So Mahavir says that you create your suffering and you create your happiness. Even happiness. For example, Lakshman walks into a party.
Party.
Yeah. He's ready that he wants to have a drink. Now he ends up in the wrong party where nobody's drinking. He's very unhappy. He finds Bakul Bhai. He says, okay, I'm gonna give you a company. So at the end of the party, they are buddies. You felt very happy. Of course, he was also coming with his. I'm just kidding. So you have a good time together, and you leave the party very happily. So, who created your happiness? Was it Bakul Bhai, or you walked in with that desire to drink? So your happinesses are also within you, and the same way sufferings are also within you, or the other way around. If I want to drink and nobody's there, I will hate the whole group. And oh, what kind of people are they? They don't even drink. What's the matter with them? This and that. And I walk home unhappy. That unhappiness was also my creation, and happiness is also my creation. So outside world literally has nothing to do with you.
No, but he keeps Mehul close to him.
So lots of behaviors are centered around of our ego. Ego is the ultimate fighter. He's the ultimate king that we fight for. So all these things we have to take into consideration. Then only we can go within and fix it, if we can fix it. But for fixing, again, is the strategies that are given to us by Mahavir that we'll go over one by one. The ignorance that we are holding on to, that this thing is real, happiness is coming from outside, suffering is coming from outside, why is the world so unfair to me, why the world is making me so suffering so much, unhappiness, all this is ignorance. And Mahavir calls this darkness of ignorance. asatya mahi tamase maheti tamase tu lai ja. So the lamp of Diwali that we light up is the light of spirituality that has to shine up. What does the light represent? Is the conversion from form into formless. The job of the flame is to convert form into formless. That light, if we light up, then we have enjoyed and celebrated Diwali. Otherwise, mithai and go home. Mithai
and cholesterol.
So our direction should be in the right direction. Otherwise, we're wasting our time on the face of this earth and a beautiful human life that we have. So much for today.
Yeah.
Thank you.